Hello, Ghosties. I'm Chance Lee,
And I'm Amanda McAvoy.
and this is That's So Gothic, a movie podcast about girls, guys, and haunted houses. And this week we are slumming it with the direct to video soft core erotic thriller, Poison Ivy 2, Lily.
Making a wish that I could just open my eyes and be different.
She wanted to be like Ivy, the girl in the pictures.
Take me with you.
Are you out of your mind? First you cut off all your hair, and then you pierce your belly button, now you're smoking? What the hell is going on with you?
I decided to become someone else.
Translate what you see onto the page.
Hawk has a weakness for his female undergrads, especially when they look like you.
Why did you bring him?
He's my boyfriend.
Angela, this is Lily.
Hi.
Your new babysitter.
Nice to meet you, Lily.
Those are pictures of Daddy's old paintings. He doesn't like to paint anymore.
Why?
Mama says it's because painting makes him crazy.
To be an artist, you have to be willing to sacrifice everything.
Tease. Taunt. It's funny to me, the way you teach, and yet you yourself no longer paint. Maybe I can help you face your fears, and you could help me face mine. Twist him around my little finger.
Take off your clothes. Your beauty scares me. It terrifies me.
So are you painting?
No one in particular.
I don't want to lose you again, especially not to some undergraduate who looks at you like you're God and pauses between foxes.
Seems like you're becoming a regular teacher's pet.
Are you with him?
Yes.
Obsession,
Fuck him.
Can't stop thinking about you.
betrayal,
I don't know who you are anymore. I don't know who I'm making love to anymore.
Don't be so insecure.
lust. Ivy taught Lily everything.
I'm never gonna forget you.
Can't let you go, Lily. Not after everything we've been through.
Poison Ivy 2, Lily.
Poison Ivy 2, Lily, was released in 1996. It was directed by Anne Goursaud and written by Chloe King. It stars Alyssa Milano as Lily, a college student, Jonathan Schaech as Graydon, a sexy sculptor, Xander Berkeley as Donald, their art professor, and Camilla Bell as Daphne.
Yeah.
Daphne. The only time I've ever seen that name pronounced that way.
Yeah.
That is Donald's young daughter who Lily babysits. And this is the story of a young woman who explores her sexuality with jealous men.
Mhm.
This movie was direct to VHS tape. So we don't have a theatrical gross for it. But the director did say in an interview that it was very successful.
Okay.
Poison Ivy 2 has a 14% critical tomato and a 36% audience tomato, which Rotten Tomatoes now calls the popcorn meter. The
Oh.
audience tomato is now a bucket of popcorn.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I've just noticed this today.
Oh.
So one of the critics they highlight is Matt Brunson of Film Frenzy, who calls it, quote, the worst film in the Poison Ivy series.
This is the only one I've seen, so I don't know if I can agree with that.
I disagree, but we'll get more into that later.
Mhm.
I'll read a couple of other user reviews. Needless to say, Roger Ebert did not review this movie.
What?
He did review the first one.
Okay.
So this is a sequel, sort of,
Mm.
to Poison Ivy, which stars Drew Barrymore.
Mhm.
And the way Roger Ebert described the first one, which was a movie that was in theaters, he says it stars Drew Barrymore as a devious Lolita who moves into a family's life and seems ready to kill the mother, marry the father, and replace the daughter. And he says this would seem more plausible if Barrymore seemed even slightly capable of actually doing it.
I can't
He
wait
thought
until
she
Drew
was-
Barrymore infiltrates his family.
We'll get into the Poison Ivy movies
Yeah.
later, but his critique about that was that she was just like too cute to be the femme fatale. So I highlighted a couple user reviews from Rotten Tomatoes. Someone named Ms. H says, the best part of this movie was the poster. One of the worst movies I've ever seen. The plot was cheesy and boring. Worst film out of the series. 1 star.
Wow, Miss H. Wow.
And then someone who didn't have a username, I don't know, because it was an old review from like 2010. I don't know if people didn't have usernames back then or if they were anonymous. They say, this movie is awesome because it shows the misunderstandings females go through at some point in their lives where we think that to get what we want, we need to become a lustful seductress. It's entertaining, provocative, and has a great message. The directing, however, isn't the best, though. These are intelligent actors, and the director obscure their talent. There's an overall feel of awkwardness during the film that makes it not feel believable. 3.5 stars.
Wow. I personally, as a woman, I will say it's not a universal experience. What happened in this movie is not a universal experience at all. So disagree with that.
So tell me more about what you thought of this movie.
So I personally hated this movie. I did not like it. And, well, I guess hated is a strong term. This movie took me so long to finish. I watched it on Hoopla, which is a library service. Not every library pays for video service, but check your local library, see if you have Hoopla and you have movies on it. So I watched it on Hoopla, and I had to like stop and walk away from this movie, I don't know, 8 times. I had to keep logging back into my Hoopla account. Like I fully memorized my like username and password now. Like I it was just really hard for me to get through. It is so awkward and uncomfortable, which I mean you could say like is kind of the theme of the movie, is like, you know, Lily is in this uncomfortable situation, but it was really hard for me to get through it. It's so uncomfortable, and the biggest critique I have of it, and I'm sure we'll talk about the actors, is the actor who plays the teacher is so icky. He's so icky. I hate him. Every time he was on screen, that's usually when I walked away. I was like, I can't. Yeah. So that's my opinion of it. But also, side note, I have not seen any of the other Poison Ivy movies. So obviously I watched this, you know, strictly for the podcast. I didn't even make the connection of because the diary, again, we'll probably get into it a little bit more. I had completely forgotten that this was supposed to be a sequel until like the last, I don't know, 10 minutes of the movie. She says something like, fuck you, Ivy. And I was like, oh, right, I forgot. Like, it's, you know, I did not enjoy it, but that's my opinion.
I love that.
Yeah. How did you, I know that you're the one who told me to watch it, so how did you're the devious bastard who got me to watch it. So how do you feel about this movie?
I kind of love this movie. So I had this very dark weekend a few months ago where I watched all 4 Poison Ivy movies in a weekend.
Oh.
They're all bad in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And this one is on Letterboxd, on Rotten Tomatoes, frequently called the worst movie in the series. So of course it is my favorite.
Yeah.
I like this one the most. I think it's the best, most interesting one. I won't talk too much since it's not like a whole Poison Ivy series, but the first one is well made, but like it feels incomplete. Like all of a sudden you'll go from scene to scene and it feels like the character relationships have changed. It feels like every third scene of the movie was chopped out and nothing was done to stitch it back together.
Yeah.
By the time you get to the end, you're like, how did we even get here?
Right.
And then the third one is more of just like your traditional erotic thriller. And then the fourth one is kind of like The Skulls with Joshua Jackson, where they're in college and there's a secret society that the girls are being inducted into, and it's called the Ivies. And and none of the movies, the first three act like they have some sort of continuity.
Yeah.
But I think so. Drew Barrymore plays Ivy in the first movie. And two things. One, I think she dies at the end of that movie. So she couldn't have gone to college and left her diary in like the college housing. Also, in Poison Ivy, her co-star is Darlene from Roseanne and Sarah Gilbert. And Darlene invites this hot, popular girl home with her. I forget why. And her dad says, "Oh, what's your friend's name?" And she doesn't know her name. So, but she knows that she has this tattoo of Ivy on her ankle. So she goes, "Oh, she's Ivy."
Oh.
And then she tells the Drew Barrymore character, she goes, "I told my dad your name's Ivy." And I forget the conceit for this.
Yeah.
And then at some point in the movie, she asks her, "What's your real name?" And Drew Barrymore refuses to tell her. She says, "I like Ivy better." So Ivy is a name that is bestowed upon her by this character.
Yeah.
And so in this one, it doesn't make sense that her diary is in a college dorm because she's dead.
Yeah.
And in the third one has this prequel moment where you see her as a child, but her mom is calling her Ivy. It's like no one even watched the first movie when they were writing these sequels. But so as a series, it's messy. I would say there are three commonalities in all Poison Ivy movies. One is a girl with a plant name. So you have Ivy, Lily. The third one has Violet. And the fourth one has Daisy and Azalea.
Oh, so cute.
Azalea's the mean one, and Daisy's the like country bumpkin, the Lily type.
Naturally,
character. There's usually an older man, younger man relationship dynamic. Sometimes there's not even a younger man. Sometimes it's just an old guy. And they all have terrible music.
Yes. Yeah. The music was very distracting in this.
The fourth one has the absolute worst music. If I don't remember when it came out, but if it came out now, I would say the music was AI generated. Like it sounds like they are making up the lyrics on the spot, like as they're singing. I've never heard anything as bad as the music in Poison Ivy, The Secret Society. So Poison Ivy 1 was theatrical and fairly tame. The other three are softcore direct-to-video movies. The fourth one is very bizarre in that it was a Lifetime movie. And the softcore scenes were added specifically for the DVD release, which gives it this very sleazy quality where like there's a clear cut. And then it feels like you're watching a softcore porn. And then they cut back and it's just like it's like, really gross.
Yeah, that's icky. Like I can see how that's even grosser because it is, like you said, like this, like, you know, appealing to the populace, kind of like sweet fondant-y, marshmallowy, and then to like it feels like very devious.
And it's gross. The sex scenes in that movie are especially gross. I thought the ones in this movie were we'll talk more about those. So let's run through our cast and crew rundown. So we have Alyssa Milano. I most know her from Charmed, which I never watched. Who's the Boss, which I did watch. And her cookies, Milano cookies. Love a Milano cookie.
Love them.
She should be a spokesperson for those cookies.
So was she well known before this movie? Do you have any idea?
So she was on the sitcom called Who's the Boss
Right.
with Tony Danza
Okay.
and Judith Light. And he was, I think, a male nanny, maybe, or male housekeeper.
Mm.
And Judith Light, who's the boss? It's Judith Light.
Oh.
She would always wear these gigantic glasses and these like power suits. She was great.
Yeah.
And they had romantic tension. She was divorced, maybe. So she was a single mom raising 2 kids, Alyssa Milano and a boy. And so Melissa Milano was the daughter. And so this was her attempt to break into more adult roles.
Yeah.
And unfortunately in the 90s, the way you did that was taking your top off.
Yes. Yeah.
So she started in a movie called Embrace of the Vampire, which has a very sultry Alyssa Milano on the cover. It was directed by the same director as this movie. And Goursaud. And so that's why they worked together again for Poison Ivy 2, which also has a very sultry Alyssa Milano on the cover. I tried to watch Embrace of the Vampire and absolutely I turned it off. I could not do it. Yeah. Did you ever watch Charmed?
I've watched episodes. It was never like a constant for me, but because that was on WB, I believe, the CW before it was CW, WB. So I remember catching it every now and then. I liked it. I feel like I know Alyssa Milano mostly from, isn't she the one who does all the MSPCA videos? Is that Alyssa
I would
Milano?
not be surprised if she did.
Yeah, I feel like that might be Alyssa Milano. I feel like that's where I know her from.
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's her.
She's someone that's just like existed in my cultural consciousness.
Yeah, right. Like that's why like I was like, was she, I knew she was on that sitcom, but I wasn't sure how big of a deal. I feel like she's just like always, maybe she was like real tabloid fodder, like in the early 2000s. Like, people just loved talking about her. I feel like she would have done really well on like Desperate Housewives. Surprised she was never on it. Or something like that.
I think if she was like 5-10 years older, I bet she would have been on that, no problem.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I feel like I've just always known who she was.
So we also have Jonathan Schaech.
Yep.
Who is very handsome. He's someone that I knew, I think just because he was hot. And he's in a movie called Hush with Gwyneth Paltrow, which I saw in the theater when I was in high school and never again because I saw everything with Gwyneth Paltrow when I was in high school.
Yeah.
He was also in That Thing You Do, which I've never seen.
Yeah, I've never seen it.
And I had forgotten this. I think I may have known this at the time, and I completely forgot it. He used to, air quote, date Ellen DeGeneres. He was her like heterosexual beard.
Yeah.
Before she came out, she would bring him to events.
Wow. Ellen was, I gotta say, batting above her league. He's a handsome fella. Yeah.
He was married to Christina Applegate.
Really?
And Jana Kramer.
Jana Kramer. That doesn't ring a bell for me.
I only know her because she was on Dancing with the Stars.
Okay.
And she gets into her job these days seems to be getting into celebrity beef with her podcast.
Oh, fun.
And then not fun, but Jonathan Schaech accused Romeo and Juliet director Franco Zeffirelli of sexually assaulting him.
Oh, I think I remember that.
Yeah.
Oh.
For someone who like does not exist, basically,
right.
Unlike Alyssa Milano, who lives rent-free in my head, like Jonathan Schaech might as well not exist anymore. He had a wild 90s.
Yeah, he was busy.
like he was busy. And so there's an interview with Anne Goursaud in a book called The Erotic Thriller in Contemporary Cinema by Linda Ruth Williams, where they talk to her. And she talks explicitly about how hot Jonathan Schaech is. And she says she was working together again with Alyssa Milano. They were doing this movie and she was like, oh, are we just going to kind of do the same thing again? It's the first movie. And Anne Goursaud says, luckily we had a guy who is absolutely gorgeous. And every time he took his shirt off, we all gasped. So I said, well, this is lucky because now I can use him as the sex object more than her. And she says Poison Ivy definitely had a following with girls. So if you put a gorgeous guy in the frame, I think it's good.
That's honestly really smart. I wish he was dumber in the movie. He's too smart for my liking.
Alyssa Milano,
No,
her character.
the guy.
Oh,
I
you
wish
wish he was dumber.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I love a himbo. I wish he was dumber.
That's true. He's
Yeah.
you know, he's kind of pseudo intellectual.
That's true. That is true. I like you meet him and he's on this motorcycle and he is gorgeous. I mean, he's like tan. He has this amazing bleach job. And it like took me a solid second to realize that he was wearing the smallest glasses known to man. His glasses are so teeny tiny on his big head. And, once I noticed it bothered me so much. So I wish they had given him some slightly bigger glasses, but he's a great looking guy.
He's very handsome.
Yeah.
We also have your favorite Xander Berkeley playing the professor. Did you know we've watched a movie for this podcast that he has been in?
Really? What was it?
He is Virginia Madsen's terrible husband in Candyman.
Oh, I knew I recognized him from somewhere, and I knew that he was also gross in it. And I didn't put it together. I was like, this man has grossed me out before.
Yep.
My spidey sense was tingling. Oh, that makes so much sense. Yeah. He's really typecast, and I think that's working for him.
It works for him very well.
Yeah.
I'll speak more about him later on. We also have another gothic return of Camilla Bell.
Yes, that was like the one thing you said about this movie before I watched it is, you know, I can finally get to know if her eyebrows have always been so incredible. And they have been. She had great little kid eyebrows. God bless her parents. They never plucked a hair. She has great eyebrows. Now I need to see baby pictures of Camilla Bell. She just came out with full,
what if they're
beautiful...
the same size? Like, yeah.
She's got to grow into them.
To grow into her eyebrows.
Great eyebrows. Super annoying kid in this movie. Great eyebrows.
Oh, you thought so? I thought she was cute.
I love it when there's a part where they're at dinner and she just goes, "I'm leaving," and she goes under the table and falls asleep. I guess I liked that. You know what? That's fine, actually.
She just felt like a real kid to me.
That is true. I wonder if they gave her any direction. They were like, just be a kid.
I just let her loose on the set. And then sent her out in front of a car at the end. We'll get to that.
Favorite part of the movie.
And did you know the director, we've also watched her work in a sense before.
Really? What was that?
Yes. She was Francis Ford Coppola's editor for Dracula.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
She edited the movie.
Oh. Oh. I hated that movie too.
She has a sensibility, I think, that is clear. Yeah.
She has a vibe.
She hasn't done a lot of work, especially as a director. Most recent movie she directed was, I think, in 2018. It was called The Maestro, which is not the Bradley Cooper Maestro.
I was gonna say, that's
also
a maestro. Famous movie.
I know. This one I've never heard of. Also has Xander Berkeley in it. So you will not be watching this movie.
No, thank you.
And he plays an Italian composer who flees Italy in the 30s and immigrates to the US.
Interesting. I will skip it.
But I find Anne Goursaud really interesting. So one of the reasons I watched this movie, I mentioned on the podcast during our More to Watch segment, the 3-hour erotic thriller documentary, We Kill for Love.
Yeah.
I had seen Poison Ivy, but I had not. No, I had watched Poison Ivy 1 and 2. I had watched 1 and 2. And something about 2 got its hooks in me.
Yeah.
And I thought, what else has Anne Goursaud done? And so she showed up as a subject in this documentary, and they talked to her explicitly about Poison Ivy too.
Yeah.
And that's also how I learned about Linda Ruth Williams, who wrote this book, The Erotic Thriller in Contemporary Cinema. And I contacted my friend who's an academic. I said, can you download this from JSTOR for me?
Yeah.
And they did. So I love the interview with Anne Goursaud. And she's asked in this interview, like, basically she's asked, who's the audience for this movie? Which I think is a great question, especially for this one.
Right.
And she says that she always uses herself as the audience. She says, it's the only thing I know. Imagine yourself as the audience. But then she says, but for the sex stuff, I think about the producers. That's my audience. I have to deliver enough for them.
That's actually like a really great answer.
I thought that was so funny. And then they use this film as an example when they start talking about the modern Gothic. And that's when I realized, that's when spoiler alert, I think this movie's pretty Gothic. And we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But that's when I was like, oh, that's why it's like living in my brain. That's why it's got its hooks in me, because it's a secret Gothic. It's like a covert Gothic.
Yeah.
And I may have said this before on the podcast, but I just want to repeat it just because this kind of informs me going into the movie. So there's another author, Nina K. Martin, who wrote Sexy Thrills, Undressing the Erotic Thriller. And in this documentary, this is how she describes a Gothic heroine. She says they are naive but curious. They want to investigate the world, yet they are punished for doing so. They are looking for love, but they found it in the wrong person. And then she says, what was finding love in the 1940s in, say, Rebecca, becomes more about finding sexual fulfillment in the 90s and less about love and more about carnal pleasure. So, and then she says that, because they talk about the erotic thriller being the combination of the masculine film noir and the feminine Gothic, and how the films that are popular, Basic Instinct, Fatal Attraction, those are the ones that are rooted in the male perspective. And the ones that get brushed aside and diminished and kind of swept under the rug are the ones that are interested in women. And I will say the one thing that sets this apart from the other Poison Ivy movies is that I don't think it's a thriller. I don't think it's particularly thrilling in any way.
Yeah.
I think it's more of a coming of age story of this character.
Yeah.
It's a messy one. You know, the script is a little messy, especially the ending. But I think that's why people say it's the least favorite, because it's not about a woman who's going to kill the man. There's not a thrill to it. It's just about her and her female experience.
That is true. There, I wonder if people didn't like this one as much. Again, I haven't seen the other ones, but she's really not violent in this movie. There's never that tension of, I think she's gonna snap and like if anything, I'm worried for her safety.
Exactly.
And yeah, so it does make for a very interesting erotic thriller, because you're getting it from this perspective of this person who you're kind of fearing for, and that makes it Gothic.
Yeah, it's a different perspective. It's definitely not, and it's not what it's marketed as, which I think is disorienting.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about these Gothic elements, and I want to know what you think. So our Gothic films have 4 elements: a girl, a guy, a house, and a haunt. So our girl, Lily,
she likes painting. She likes watching people have sex. She likes what else does she like? There's see, this is where I struggle with the movie. Is
that's kind of it.
Yeah, is like Lily, I think, is lacking a little bit in characterization.
Yes.
She briefly mentions she's late getting to school. She's like 3 weeks late entering college, which I'm pretty sure is not allowed. Just not going to school for the first like 3 weeks. College semesters are like 2.5 months. Like, you've missed most of it, girl.
I would be mad if she showed up this
exactly
late.
exactly.
But to be fair, if Jonathan Schaech showed up that late to my class,
open arms.
I would say, come on in.
Come on.
So I
let's
do
start
understand
over.
why the teacher welcomes Alyssa Milano into the class,
is
even
true.
though she's late.
That is true. It's also
this seems to be the only class she's taking, though.
Yeah. And also, it just so happens that there's the exact right amount of desks only because this professor has already slept with this student who has left and is now yeah. So they were preparing for at least one person to leave. Thank God he had inappropriate relations with this one other student. Yeah, Lily, she has kind of a fraught relationship with her parents, but that's not really explored too much. Her parents just want her to call. They're leaving messages on her. Apparently she has a solo landline in this house, which is incredible for the 90s.
That's true.
Well, no one has a solo landline. That's incredible. And she already set up a voicemail day one. No one would do that.
She's tech savvy.
That's true.
Lily.
She's tech savvy. Yeah, and apparently men find her very irresistible, which, I mean, it is Alyssa Milano. She is super hot, but I guess I just don't understand her character. But give me your perspective on Lily.
Yes, no, I agree that there's not much there. I think she exists as an archetype. I think a lot of this movie is about exploring these archetypes. And she's from Kalamazoo, Michigan.
You're gonna laugh when you hear this. I'm from Kalamazoo.
She's as rural can get. Like, I actually don't even know how rural Kalamazoo is. It just sounds rural.
Yeah.
And yeah, she is fitting into the archetype that I mentioned before. She's very naive. She's in Los Angeles, but she wants to explore.
Yes. She stumbles across Ivy's journal, and it titillates her.
Yes.
Because Ivy has been up to some shenanigans.
From beyond the grave.
Yeah.
So that actually, let's talk a little bit about the house. So she ends up in this house that is her like college housing. I love this house. I love where she's staying.
It's a nice house.
It's really cute. And Anne Goursaud again specifically mentions the house in this interview. She says, I wanted to find a house that you weren't sure if it was going to fall down. She says it has a very gothic feel to it. She uses the word gothic. She says it has a lot of hidden parts. And they were really lucky to find this. She called it a gothic castle in Los Angeles. According to IMDb, it is at 2016 Rockford Road in Los Angeles. I did a Google Street View, and it seems to, I can't tell if the address is accurate. There's a house that's set back, and it looks like it might be the house. You can see like a little pointy eave there. So it may be that house, but they used a real house, regardless of where it is, as both the exterior and interior. It wasn't a set.
Yeah, it is a pretty cool house. A lot of the bedroom doors look like they've been like swapped out for front doors because they have like little windows that you can peek into. It's kind of elevated. I think that's pretty common in LA, where it's like sort of built up on this like hill almost, but like it's like a concrete. Yeah, I think that's common.
Yeah, the street view was like on the street is a 3-car garage.
Yes.
And then there's so much growth.
Yeah.
So it's hard to see the actual house. So that's why I'm like, I don't know if this is accurate or not, but it kind of looks like that house up on that hill.
Yeah. So it has like a lot of privacy, even though it's in this very like metropolis area. There's a great spot for whatever his name is to be working on this gigantic metal sculpture. Like, I don't even know what he's doing. But there's plenty of space for him. Yeah, it's a pretty nice house.
I like the house, and you could see it in a different era. You could see Alyssa Milano in like a nightgown with a candle, like going through the hallways, and she She spies on her roommate having sex. She like looks through the little peephole.
Yes.
She finds this diary kind of hidden in a nook in her closet. Like it does have these little secrets to it that I think are cool. There's something, it's going to sound so weird about this horny movie, but there's something cozy about this movie to me. It's become like a comfort movie for me.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I can see that. It has like autumnal vibes, even though it's LA. But I mean, it's like the start of a school year. You get that like that feeling. It culminates in they have Thanksgiving, which I mean, I haven't fleshed out this thought at all, but like you also have the professor's house, which is very cold, modern, lots of glass.
You're right.
The hallways are very, very straight, which is actually kind of a plot point later. There's sort of these secret hidden nooks and crannies, but also everything is kind of on display because there's like frosted glass, the hallways, little girls sleeping under tables. It's very different from the house she's living in.
That's a really good point. It kind of emphasizes their two different personalities.
Yeah. And, I think it's kind of interesting too, because you get, I don't want to read too deeply into this movie, but like these two different perspectives on like
I
art.
do.
These perspectives on like art and like what it means to be an artist. He's living in this very cold, harsh house. He has a wife who's a photographer. You see some of her pictures. They seem very like straightforward portraits. And then her artwork is a lot more scribbly, landscapes, that kind of thing. You have this big iron sculpture in the yard that's like, what the fuck even is that?
But he seems to think he seems to think he's going to get a Guggenheim Fellowship for his.
He totally
sculpture.
is, for his rusted, tires and, as long as you have sex in the middle of it, apparently it becomes way more important.
I hope she got a tetanus shot before that.
I do too. That was,
yeah,
girl, that wasn't varnish. That was rust.
The sex scene though, it is like, this movie is, I think for a softcore movie, tame. I don't know what Hoopla has, but my Blu-ray collector's set of all 4 Poison Ivy movies, you can choose whether to watch the regular version or an extended cut. So I'm not sure what is added in the extended cut. I have watched the extended cut.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, on Hoopla, you see like lots of boobs. Pretty much all of the nudity in this movie is boobs. You don't really get any butterballs. You don't get either of those. You get boobs.
Okay, there is some butt in the extended cut. His
butt. I mean, we might have some butt. I guess I wasn't paying too much attention, but but it's a lot of boobs. So, Hoopla is not, what I'm assuming is the regular cut is not completely sanitized.
Right. Okay. And I don't know if this is just me making excuses for this movie, but one of the sex scene is, this sounds so stupid and I sound like one of the producers or whatever. It's critical to the plot.
It kind of is, yeah.
But it is, unlike the ones that I mentioned in Poison Ivy 4, where they're just there. They're literally just there to be like spank material.
Yeah.
Like these are about, it's about her. The first one is about her sleeping with Graydon for the first time. She's a little shy.
Yes.
She's a little nervous, as he undresses her, and he's very sensual towards her and everything. And then there's the ones about her exploring like modeling and she's taking her top off to pose nude for these drawings. So it makes sense with the plot.
It does make sense, I will say. Like, I don't think it's totally gratuitous. I mean, Alyssa Milano has like great boobs, so like,
she's
power
so
to
hot
her.
in this
She's
movie.
really hot. Yeah. But it does make sense for this.
Before we talk about our guy who I feel like we'll have the most to say about. Let's foray into the haunt briefly. Ivy being dead,
Yeah.
she's a ghost. But no, there's like this Ivy in a sense is this haunt, this
Yeah.
woman who's not there
Mm-hmm.
in a physical form, but is influencing our main character.
Yeah. Trying to figure out how to say this. Again, I haven't seen the first Poison Ivy. Do you know, and genuinely, I don't know if you do, was this movie written specifically to be a sequel, or
did they just make it one?
Yeah.
That's a really good point. I would not be surprised if this was a script and they were like, let's just make this Poison Ivy 2.
Right, because that's kind of how I felt about this movie was,
Yes.
Is it a sequel or is it a script and they threw some bits and bobs in?
Yes, it has absolutely nothing to do with the first one, other than there's this random journal by someone named Ivy who has to be a different person.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah,
if there's real continuity, she just has to be a different person.
Yeah. I mean, it almost makes the movie almost makes less sense with the journal included. Like the movie would have made more sense if it had just been excluded entirely. So I think the haunt is kind of, when it boils down, like, I don't know, sexuality.
Yeah.
Coming of age. I liked what you said earlier about how this really it's less of a thriller and more of a coming of age.
Mm-hmm.
They should be showing this movie in like sex ed classes.
I think it's interesting the way it works out. And there is a moment though, there's this kind of random scene where she sees herself in a dream that it's almost ghost like.
Yes.
And it's like she's changed and she's seeing her old self in this dream, and the old self says, please take me with you, and she says, I can't, and she like leaves it behind, and then she wakes up. It's this kind of, again, gothic moment in an otherwise basic film.
Yeah, that's actually, I kind of forgot about that scene until right now. That is very gothic, genuinely kind of creepy too.
Mm-hmm.
And sad.
Definitely, I feel like it's sad, and it's something I feel like this director may have added in, because it seems like she's a very gothic sensibility.
Yeah, she clearly likes it.
So last we have our guy, Professor Gordon. I find him very handsome in close up. If I can only see his face, his eyebrows to chin.
Yeah.
But once they pull out, because he's balding but has long hair and it's pulled back, it's a horrible look.
It's really terrible. I mean, I hate to judge because I was an 18-year-old girl. I'm sure I had terrible taste. I think technically she's supposed to be 20. I think at some point she says she's 20. I'm sure I had horrible taste, and I get it. Like he is kind of playing up this like charismatic, former artist. There's obviously like a power dynamic there, but he's so icky. He's just so icky.
He's I don't find him appealing. Both men are mean to her at certain points in ways that I wish she didn't tolerate.
Yes.
There's a review on Letterboxd that's a positive review of this movie. One of the few I really, really had to sift to find positive reviews of this movie. Almost all of them are 1 or 2 stars.
Yeah.
I think this person gave it 4 stars.
Ooh.
Their screen name is Dakota Noot, Noot. But I found this really interesting comment. This person, who I'm going to assume is a woman, I'm making this assumption, may or may not be valid, but she says, there's sadly a lot of truths to this movie, as trashy as it is, in the art school professor-student dynamic. Even the professor's current wife is a former student. There are so many straight male professors who are that inappropriate. Then she says, but for an appropriate love interest, Jonathan Schaech as Graydon, and his bleached hair is so handsome. He is so beautiful. I would fake like his art. I can't say the same for the professor, whose paintings are just so bad.
Yeah. That's a very good point. I will say is, again, like, I get where it's coming from. It's just, I guess it's hard to watch, which again is like probably part of the point. It's hard to watch.
And it's not something you want when you are popping in to your VHS player in 1996.
Right.
Poison Ivy 2, where you have this sultry Alyssa Milano on the cover.
Yeah.
It's just, you're not, it's kind of a Trojan horse. You're not getting what it says on the box.
Right. I think one of the biggest issues I have with this movie was just his, it goes back to her character too. I just don't understand how he becomes so obsessed with her, especially when he has this history of sleeping with students. I mean, that's literally how the movie starts. And obviously Alyssa Milano is gorgeous. She's amazing. But like, his wife is also very gorgeous. The student he sleeps with at the beginning is very gorgeous, and he ends things with her. And Alyssa Milano just, in my opinion, in this character, I'm sorry, I should say Lily, because Alyssa Milano is incredible. I'm sure she's a wonderful woman. Lily, nothing about her personality and the situation that they're in makes sense for me for him to get so upset that she has a boyfriend, to literally, like, the worst part of the movie is the attempted assault towards the end. That's very difficult. And then, like, beyond that, something tragic happens. I don't know when you want to address that.
Let's go for it. Now's a good time to talk about the ending.
Little girl gets smashed by a car. But it's so funny. She's fine.
It is funny. Fine. Yes, it's like she doesn't even have a scratch on her.
Fine. She just sits up and she's like, oh. And the movie spends a weird, like, it's not relatively, I mean, it's probably only like 3 seconds, but a weird beat on the guy who hits her because he's gonna call 911. Like, why did they put so much focus on him for like a weird amount of time?
Yeah, that's a good. Yeah, how much did he get paid for that? Because that's more than just a background role.
Yeah, but I mean, by the time he pulls out his phone to call 911, she's sitting up. The mom's holding her. She's fine. No scratches. Eyebrows intact.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Not a brow out of place.
Yeah, and then, but he doesn't know, like, just how bad it is or whatever. He like immediately leaves that scene to follow her home and then again like viciously attack her. The ending is extremely dramatic, which is kind of fun, but it would be funner if it wasn't so disgusting also.
Yeah,
it's gross. And then I don't know how this little girl didn't just poof into smoke, because the father, her genetics, 50% of her genetics, falls 10 feet on his back and blood just comes gushing out of his mouth and he's dead. Just dead. So how his young progeny, the small little girl, didn't just evaporate when she got tapped by a car makes no sense to me. So
she got her mother's genes from putting up with all that shit for years.
That's true. I hope she had a different father. I hope that is the end of this movie, is the mother was also cheating. And there's also sort of a weird, just quickly to throw it in too, there's this weird sexual tension between the wife mother and Schaech, or whatever his name is, the hot actor. So at one point I thought, are they gonna have sex? And then Lily and the professor are gonna have sex? Is that how this ends? Right. Is like, it's this weird swingers thing. But yeah, professor's dead, fell out of this gothic house. It just instantly dies. It's great.
He doesn't fall very far.
No.
And yeah, the end is messy, to say the least. It feels like they were like, oh shit, we're gonna market this as an erotic thriller.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to die. What do we do?
Yeah.
It's not a strong ending.
No, and I really wish the little girl died. I know it's terrible to say, but if this is your first time listening to this podcast, you don't know this, but we very frequently talk about how much we appreciate it when kids die in movies. Obviously, we don't want kids to die in real life. Obviously.
But in movies, it's great.
But in movies, because it's so unexpected. I mean, even when she gets hit by the car, I was pretty shocked, but I was very upset when she bounced right back up.
She's so fine. She's
so
fine.
She's so fine.
Yeah. The end of this movie really comes out of left field. And yeah, it's both too grim with the assault and then too ridiculous, and these two wildly disparate tones really clash together.
Yes. Yeah. It's odd. What happens? The movie must keep going on after he dies. I don't even remember. Like, what's like the last 5 minutes?
There's literally like a flash forward of an unknown amount of time, and then Lily goes to apologize to Graydon for what, I don't know.
Right.
She feels responsible for this, and this is why I don't. The reviewer who says it has an excellent message, I'm just like, what the fuck are you thinking? But because I think the message of this movie is terrible. Which is basically like, be yourself. Unless you're a woman, just don't be slutty though. Like, don't be sexy.
Yeah.
You need to be yourself, but not those parts of you.
Yeah.
But as an exercise in the genre, I think the ending is really good. Because that's this genre. She gets punished unfairly for her curiosity. It almost makes it a horror movie. And then at the end though, she apologizes to Graydon for whatever, and then they say they love each other, and it's like a happily ever after for her. So at least she gets that.
Yeah. They got to go back to Kalamazoo together. He can work out in the fields. There's a lot more
scrap metal probably in Kalamazoo, and it's going to be cheaper.
Yeah, and I was going to say, he's had so much more space for it. He could make towers. Graydon,
I see Graydon as our bonus gothic, our romantic rival.
Yes. Oh, that is true.
I was like, the first time I watched this movie, I was like, what the hell kind of a name is Graydon? I Googled it, and like a genealogy website said that it is it's related to the German word Greitag, which means greedy.
Ooh.
But it could also mean castle.
Oh.
And to me, it sounds like cretin, like a scumbag.
Oh.
And he's kind of all of those things.
Yeah. I was really upset that I'm not upset that she slept with him, because, girl, I get it. He's
so hot.
He's very hot. But the sort of start of their communication is he like trashes her art in the art class.
He's so mean to her.
So mean for no reason either. Like, no reason. And it's brushed off way too soon. Like, yeah. So, I mean, I get it. Like, you need to be able to take criticism as an artist, but like, maybe you shouldn't have sex with the people giving you that much criticism.
Yeah. Her boundaries need some work.
Yeah. And then especially, the ending then, where it's apparently they're just happy-go-lucky boyfriend, girlfriend forever. I don't love that.
Since they killed her teacher together.
Yeah. You know what? Nothing brings you closer than some good old-fashioned
predator.
Yeah.
She murders a predator. He murders like a teacher that he just hates.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
I also like, speaking of boundaries, like if I was the instructor and a student talked about me that way in class, I'd be like, I need this fucker out of my class.
Seriously,
like,
drop him. Yeah.
You don't just get to come back to class that way.
Seriously. Also, it's very funny. He's in the class, even though he's a sculptor, but that makes some sense, because if you're like an art major, you're probably taking drawing classes. But then also her roommate, who is a dancer, is in that class.
Oh, is she?
Yeah,
I forgot
she's in
legit.
that. Yeah.
Her insufferable roommate.
Yeah, which she's a dancer because she comes into frame for the first time by doing a high kick. And then her roommate, who is a coder, is doing something on Microsoft Paint when you meet her. So she's clearly technology savvy. Really great.
Tanya. I love Tanya because
Tanya is great.
the first like 2 or 3 scenes of Tanya,
Yeah.
she has the plastic container of grocery store cookies
Yeah.
that she like carries around with her. I love that that is her character trait.
That's her
that She
character.
loves the grocery store cookies because
Yes.
those honestly are the best.
Yes. Yes. And then Lily is so mean to her for no reason. Tanya's like, hey, I'm worried about you. And Lily's like, piss off. Like, I'm fine. I'm having fun. And then, like, in a weird, like, gotcha moment, Tanya's like, well, I was going to introduce you to, like, Susie or whatever her name is. And it's her girlfriend. And they kiss and they look at her like, ha ha, which is, like, so weird.
It's so random.
It's so random. I feel like actually this movie, you could really dissect it. Actually, I kind of wish I had thought more deeply about it before this podcast, because I think that there's actually a lot of things that could be garnered from this movie.
That's a weird scene because again, it feels like they're writing this line where and again, this is only the second movie, and it's something I even hesitate to call a franchise, but where she needs to be bad in some way. So it's like, this is the only way they put her being like a bad girl. But also, to be fair, before that, Tanya says to her, you cut your hair, you pierce your belly button, and now you're smoking? As if like these are the 3 worst things you could possibly do.
Yeah.
You pierce your belly button?
Yeah. Also, I love that her cutting her hair is a huge plot point, because I can tell you, as someone who frequently cuts her own hair, no one ever notices, especially when you go from like elbow length to like just under the shoulder. No one's noticing. No one. Like, I know that I'm not as hot as Alyssa Milano, so like, I don't get Alyssa Milano level of attention. No one has ever noticed, especially a man, her professor. He says something really terrible where it's like, he says, oh, you cut your hair. Women only cut their hair if they're under emotional distress, or what I wrote it down. Hold on. Okay, you're either going through something terribly tragic or exciting in your life. That is not true. She could just be hot. She could just I take offense to people who say that, girls only cut their own hair when they're going through something. I have to cut my hair because I'm broke sometimes. Like, how do you know that that's not what she's a college student?
Right.
Yeah.
It's such a Lifetime movie trope where you've gone through something terrible and cut your hair. And then, but he uses it as this predator moment. Like, like, oh, I can swoop in and take advantage of this girl in a, emotionally off-kilter moment.
Yeah. She's clearly in distress. She cut 3 inches off of her hair. I can use this. Yeah.
Do you have any memorable scenes that you would like to discuss?
I mean, the most memorable is the girl getting hit by the car. That's pretty great. And then I would say the other standout scene is there's this weird, not even secondary, like third-dairy character of this Asian roommate who just kind of lurks. Robert. And there's this totally unnecessary part where she's at this house party. I think it's at their house, because I think the dancer is throwing it. And she kisses this guy in like a masquerade mask, and it turns out to be Robert. And like, it's just kind of like, oh, she kisses him and she's kind of like, oh, whoa. And he like kind of runs off, but he doesn't seem that upset. But then Graydon comes up and is like, you just have to ruin everything, don't you? Why that reaction? He's a great character though.
That's a very bizarre scene.
Yeah.
For a lot of reasons. Like, he's portrayed as this weird sexless Asian, which is a bad stereotype.
Yeah.
And when she kisses him, it's almost like the movie treats it almost like a jump scare. It's like, oh, like, it's a very bizarre.
Right.
And yeah, I find him a fascinating character because he later comes back. He tries to protect her when she's being attacked by the professor. And the poor guy gets thrown down the stairs.
That's right. Oh, the poor guy just wants to play his clarinet.
He plays cello. He plays his cello.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I know, because the captions would say, like, romantic cello music or whatever. It's something else. So I know cello is not a bonus gothic, but
Mm.
he could very well be playing piano, and he sits by the window and the music like filters
Yeah.
out through. So my favorite scene in this movie
Mhm.
is when she shows up at the party and the person in the mask, who you do not yet know is Robert, says, "Do you want an icebreaker?" And she says,
Mm.
"What's an icebreaker?" And he takes the lime and he squirts it on her arm, I
I
think.
thought he like rubbed it, or does he do that after where he like rubs it on her like collarbone almost?
Yeah. And then he
Yeah.
puts it in her mouth.
Yep.
He like licks the lime juice off of her and then like
Yeah.
takes the lime out of her mouth. But Alyssa Milano's reaction in this scene is so good.
Yeah.
Like, I have to wonder if she didn't know what he was gonna do,
Yeah, she does
because
really
there's
seem,
this
yeah.
surprise. I just love that scene. That scene really stands out to me,
Mm.
even though this is a very bizarre character.
Yeah.
There is, though, this element of queerness in the background of this movie where you
Mm.
have Robert, who's this, again, bad stereotype of this sexless Asian, but like does kind of come out of his shell when he's masked.
Yeah.
You have Tanya and her surprise
Yeah.
lesbian girlfriend. And then we have the drag mime that,
Oh, I love the drag mime.
yes, that's just like background color. Like, and I
Yeah.
love that. That's another reason this is like a cozy movie for me. I love the mood of it. Each character has like one character trait,
Yeah.
but I like that one trait.
Right, right. I mean, again, like I feel like you could really psychoanalyze this movie because the professor, the gross, creepy professor, is really mean to the mime at one point. He's talking to Lily about it, and he says, I don't remember exactly how the conversation goes, but he says something about how, like, for his sake, I hope someone puts him out of his misery. So
Yes.
mean. And you could
Yes.
look at that as like a hatred of queer people. Like
Yep.
he's very
Oh, for sure.
heteronormative. Like he's very, but like what he's doing is 1,000 times grosser than just performing as a queer person.
Mm-hmm. And it says a lot about her character too, in that she's just this observer. You know, she
Yeah.
doesn't comment on it. She doesn't judge these people. She, it's part of her worldview, but
Mhm.
she's not mean about it the way the
Yeah.
teacher is.
Yeah, that is true. You know what? You're changing my mind on this movie. It's a
Oh, I
very
love this
smart movie. Yeah.
I love this movie. I wouldn't go that far, but
Yeah.
I'll have two more scenes that I want to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
One is so ridiculous that I have to point it out, and that is after she is almost sexually assaulted by her professor.
Mhm.
She goes home and she's just like crying and smearing cold cream on her face. Like, like, she almost looks like a clown. Like she just has
Yeah.
so much cream on her face and she's just crying
Yeah.
hysterically. I was just like, girl. Like,
Pawns down. Like,
I mean, it could be like there's always the stereotypical like crying in the shower Lifetime movie scene, so at least it's not that, but
Yeah.
still. And then my other favorite part of this movie is when she's trying on the sexy Ivy outfit,
Mhm.
which is like some high-heeled boots and like a little halter top and this chunky necklace, but she is wearing long sleeve, like neck to ankle white long johns. Like that probably have the little flap to undo
Yes.
when you need to poop in the back.
Yep.
Like she is wearing those while she's
Yes.
trying on this sexy outfit, and it kills me.
I will say, like, I think she is a fashion icon in this movie. I love her. She's always wearing those like painters, and actually, because I think it's the long johns must be over them or under them, I should say. Because she's always wearing like these painters overalls, but sometimes she'll undo them and like tie it around her waist, and she's a fashionista.
She's really cute in this, and only Alyssa Milano could make like long johns that like a Vermont lumberjack
Yeah.
would wear.
Right, like a
look
gross
hot.
one who's like
Yeah,
has like dip in his mouth. Yeah.
Yes, like she's so fucking hot, even just in these white long johns.
That is true.
Well, anything else you want to share about Poison Ivy 2, Lily?
No, I think that's a wrap on Lily.
That's a wrap on Lily. So, what else have you been watching, reading, consuming?
So, well, quick, mention. I won't talk about it too much. I did see Beetlejuice in theaters. I really enjoyed it. I won't get too much into it because it's obviously a brand new movie. I don't want to talk about it too much. Besides that, I've been watching, I kind of wanted to save it until I got to the specific point because there's a reason I'm watching this, but I don't know that I will make it to this point, and not for a necessarily bad reason, but anyways, all of that to say is I've been watching Riverdale.
Okay.
And I just kind of have it on the background while I'm playing Sims and stuff. I am actually really enjoying it. I think it's something you would actually like. And again, I was gonna wait until I got to this point, but I think it's in the third or fourth season. And I'm just really bad at keeping up with shows. And Riverdale is a long show. It's only 6 seasons, but it's one of those CW shows that has 22 episodes in one season. So I don't know that I'm gonna make it. But the reason I started watching it is because I was watching a YouTuber talking about it. She actually went through and talked about every season, and it was just really fun to hear someone else talking about it. And specifically in the third or fourth season, there's a scene where some of the main characters go to a rest stop or something, and oh my god, I cannot believe I'm Elvis's granddaughter.
Riley
Keough shows up. And
what?
She's a big name at this point. She specifically asked to go on Riverdale because she loved it so much. So she's a super minor character. She only shows up for one episode. I don't even know if she shows up for more than a scene. She might be a waitress or something. I don't even know. But I heard that and I was like, sign me up. If it's good enough for Riley Keough, it's good enough for me.
I love that.
I think you need to start, because it is, I will say, the first season, I'm almost done. It is actually, the first season is genuinely, in my opinion, good. And I think a lot of people like the first season. It's kind of campy. It's kind of over the top. I know it gets even crazier and kind of stupid. But I might like that. I'm not sure. But I'm trying really hard to stick it out for Riley Keough.
How do you watch it?
Netflix, unfortunately.
Oh, I know I have Netflix.
Oh, good.
That's the one streamer that I keep.
Yeah, I had to steal my sister-in-law's because she lives in this house now, so I can fortunately use hers, but I usually hate Netflix. But it is fun, and I think it's a good show if you need a show to throw on in the background.
I might do that. There is a new biography of Elvis coming out.
That's right. I saw that.
Was written by Lisa Marie before she died,
mm-hmm.
and finished by Riley Keough. And Riley is going on a book tour for it as well. So I'm curious about that book.
Oh my goodness, me too. I was planning on reading the book. I'll look up book tour dates. Maybe we can.
That would be fun.
Give her a That's So Gothic sticker. We're big fans.
Oh, we have to. I'm such a big fan.
Yeah, she's so incredible. Anyways, with that being said, what have you been dabbling in?
I have an unconventional recommendation of a cookbook. I'm going to recommend the book Snacking Cakes by Yossy Arefi. At the library in which I work, we have a cookbook club. So each month we pick a cookbook and make a recipe from it and have a little potluck and discuss. And I've been looking forward to doing snacking cakes for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got it in and I looked at it and I immediately bought it on Amazon. It was only $10 or $11 on Amazon. So it's all cakes. They're all single layer cakes. And they can all be made in the same pan. So what I find, what I find really funny is that all the cakes are made to be made in an 8-inch square pan, but 3/4 of the pictures in the book are round. The round cake is just more visually appealing.
It is, yeah.
So I make them all in a 9-inch springform pan. By all of them, I mean 2. But my goal is to make every cake in this book.
Ooh.
I'm saying that to hold myself to it. But Unless it's so I've looked, I would eat all of them, and which isn't the same. Most cookbooks you're going to pick and choose recipes. I would literally eat every cake in this book, and most of them don't have any unusual ingredients, and even if they do, they're used in at least one other recipe.
Nice.
So you're not buying something just to use for this one thing and then letting it go stale in your cabinet.
Yeah.
So I've made 2 cakes from this book so far. I have made the berry cream cheesecake, which I highly recommend. And this recipe was unique to me because the cream cheese, you have it chilled cold, like it would be. You break it into little chunks, and it's mixed in the batter in little chunks. So you get these little creamy chunks of cream cheese throughout the cake.
That sounds incredible.
Really good. And then I made the ricotta cake. Ooh. So unlike the cream cheesecake, the ricotta is mixed throughout the batter. And I'm doing them in order. So this was also a blueberry cake. And I didn't want to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So each recipe has different variations that they include. So this one has a recipe to use plums and nectarines. Ooh. So I made a plum and nectarine ricotta cake. Maybe one of the best cakes I've ever. It's definitely one of the best cakes I've ever made.
Yeah.
I loved it. So next on the docket is the buckwheat banana cake.
Ooh.
I did not buy buckwheat. There are a few whole wheat cakes in this book, so I bought whole wheat flour.
Yep.
And then one of the variations is a tahini glaze.
Ooh, that sounds good.
So I'm going to add that. So I'll definitely make you a cake at some point.
Please. Oh my goodness. I love fruity cakes. I love lemony. I love, what's it called? Snacking? Like
snacking cakes.
All right. I'm adding it to my Amazon cart as we talk. Oh yeah, and it's nice. It is relatively inexpensive, which
it's a steal.
Yeah, cookbooks are, especially I love oh my goodness, what is her name? I actually have a cookbook right here. Claire Saffitz. She's really popular. She was like a Bon
I've heard
Appetit.
of her.
Yeah. I really love her cookbooks. Both of her like baking cookbooks. But they're expensive, especially if you buy them like new. They're like $35. So it's really hard to justify it, but I love those cookbooks. But I love a good cookbook. That's a great recommendation.
Yes, and this is the perfect cookbook for me. I love cake.
Yeah.
I live in a small apartment, so I don't have the capacity to have a bunch of different tools. So having the one cake pan that you can just use for everything is so nice. She lays out at the beginning all the tools you need for to make all of the recipes in the book. She tells you how to store the cakes. One thing that I never knew, she tells you how to see if your baking powder and baking soda is still good. If it's been sitting in the cabinet for a while, how to test it. And again, it has a picture. It's got a color picture of every recipe.
Love
so
that.
You know she actually made them.
Yeah.
That's one of my cookbook pet peeves. If there's no picture, I think you didn't make this.
Yeah.
You didn't make this. And she has these variants for everything. So if it's a weird ingredient, something that might be, some people might like the taste of, or if it might be expensive, she has a substitute for almost all of those.
That's so cool.
There's really just an infinite number of recipes that you can make in this book.
Oh, very nice.
Snacking cakes.
Oh, cute.
And so enjoy.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, Amanda. And thank you, Ghosties, for listening to us break down Poison Ivy 2, Lily. Oh, no, we're not done yet. We never decided if it was gothic for real.
You kind of alluded to it.
I like a dictator. I was like, this is gothic, but we need to hear your opinion. So do you think, after our discussion, is this so gothic, goth-ish, or no gothic?
If you had asked me at the top of the episode, not gothic at all. But I will say, I don't know that you fully convinced me that it's a good movie, but you convinced me it's a gothic movie. It's gothic.
I'll take that. I'll take that.
Yeah.
I'm also not convinced it's a good movie either. I just love it.
Yeah.
Which is a different thing entirely.
That is true.
I love this bad movie.
Yeah.
And I will say, knowing all the kind of awkward and bad and weird parts, rewatching it the second time, I liked it even more.
Okay. All right.
Because I knew what was coming. My expectations were perfectly calibrated.
Okay.
Watching it a second time.
Okay. Yeah, we'll see if I have any Hoopla credits left, and maybe I'll give it a go.
And I will say the first Poison Ivy movie is worth a watch.
Okay.
The others are not.
Yeah, I don't think I could make it past this one. I could see myself maybe giving Drew Barrymore a shot.
First one's worth a shot.
Yeah.
On that note, thank you again, Amanda, and thank you, Ghosties, for listening to us break down Poison Ivy 2, Lily, a gothic film. Please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Subscribe to us. Send a link to a friend. Now, we don't always talk about horror movies. Sometimes we talk about softcore porn now. It's great. We've really made it big here on That's So Gothic. So until next time, stay ghosty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ah.